With my sewing machine already threaded, and I also have my bobbin in the bobbin holder, I'm going to raise my presser foot and then lower my needle. My needle will be lowered to the starting needle position. Then I'll take my fabric and I will put it underneath the presser foot and line the right edge up with the seam guide on the needle plate. When I get to the end, when I want to turn, I will wait until I get the fabric, the bottom of the fabric, lined up with the horizontal line on the needle plate. I'll raise my presser foot and rotate my fabric counterclockwise. Lower my presser foot and continue sewing with the edge of the fabric following along the seam guide. Trim my edges, trim my seam allowances because I sewed a 5/8 inch seam, so I'm going to trim it down to about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to trim or clip the corners. I'll trim straight across and then I will do another diagonal cut. Then when I turn my fabric inside out, that will keep all the bulk from the corners. I'll use my bone folder to push out the corners so they're nice and pointy. And then I'll press it with my iron real quick and I'll have some nice corners. Now, not all sewing machines have these needle guides or gauges, seam gauges on the needle plate. So what you can do is raise your presser foot, lower your needle so that it's in the starting needle position, and then take your seam gauge, this 6-inch metal ruler, and line it up, the marking on the ruler with the front of the needle. So for a 5/8 inch seam allowance, I'll find the 5/8 inch seam mark on my ruler, line it up with my needle. I'm just putting a little piece of tape on the ruler to kind of hold it in place. Then I'll take a longer piece of, this is painter's tape, and line it up with the edge of that seam gauge or that metal ruler that I'm using to mark my seam guide. I'll remove my ruler, raise my needle, then I'll take my fabric and put it under my presser foot, lining the right edge up with the left edge of my seam guide or the piece of tape. I'll lower my needle and I will begin stitching, keeping my edge of my fabric even with the edge of the tape. And in this example, I just stitched straight off the edge, but there you can see I have a nice, even 5/8 inch stitch down the side of my fabric. So if I wanted to do a corner, again, I would put my fabric under my presser foot, lining the right edge of my fabric up with the left edge of the piece of tape. Lower the presser foot, lower my needle, begin stitching. Then when I get near the edge of the fabric, I can use the horizontal guides to help me determine where my seam allowance is, and then I will raise my presser foot with my needle still down and rotate my fabric counterclockwise. Now you can put a piece of tape on the front of your sewing machine too to mark your 5/8 inch, 1/2 inch seam allowance so that you know when to turn. But you can also just stitch down when you reach near the corner. Stop with your needle in the down position, rotate your fabric counterclockwise, and see if the fabric lines up with the edge of the tape. If it does, then you know that you have reached your turning point. You will go ahead and turn and continue stitching. So now I'm going to trim my corners, so I will cut straight across at a diagonal, and then I will cut each side of that point at an angle so that it removes the bulk from the point.